So yeah, so yeah, I actually started reading books and actually completely changed my life just a little bit. So basically, originally, I was actually applying to read books so I could get so I can spend less time on the internet, aka YouTube, aka me watching 10 hours of YouTube videos, and yeah, I just wanted to just get my mind off of that, reduce the amount of screen time that I had at the time and actually do something more productive and important in my life. But that took me about a month. Yeah. After a month and during that one night when that one book was right beside me, I basically was completely exhausted from watching yet another 10 hours of YouTube videos. And I didn't really had nothing else to do at the night. So I was like, you know what? Why don't I just read a couple of pages of whatever book that was right beside me. And that's what I exactly did. Well, I didn't exactly read a couple of pages. I actually read 18 pages that night. And then the next day, I completely finished the book. Afterwards, I started to fall in love with reading. And here was the first book that I've read, which is The Alchemist. And yes, it is inverted because I'm recording on my camera. But yeah, this was the first book. I've actually read this book before, so when I read it that night, it's technically speaking my second read, and it was actually more vivid and enlightening than I expected. When I reread the book for the second time, I've realized a lot of details that I've somehow missed during my first read, which is kind of interesting because I wouldn't have expected to uh, to learn new things while I'm reading it for the second time. I just literally thought that I was big brain and all of that stuff was inside my head. Like I just remembered everything, but apparently I did not, and apparently I also did picked up on certain things. So I probably didn't read the book properly. I'm also illiterate, so that's another thing to consider. But yeah, this second read was really nice. And it's a really short book. It's 178 pages to be exact. So it makes sense I was able to get through this within a day, which is pretty nice. I really enjoyed that. And yeah, it's a nice, simple story. If you guys have not read The Alchemist, it's just about a boy embarking on a journey just to fulfill his personal legend and find some treasure. That's the basic synopsis of it. And there's a lot of valuable life lessons that I believe a lot of people would enjoy reading. Some, I guess you could say, are pretty blatant. Others are actually pretty enlightening, like I said. That's why I said this book was enlightening to read for the second time because it just gives you a different perspective on life. And that's what I like about reading books now. That's why I'm reading more books because it's giving me a different perspective. And speaking of different perspectives, this is the second book, The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. One of my most, I won't say most, but it's one of my favorite philosophers, I guess you could say. He's a writer at first, but like his head, I guess you can consider him philosopher because he studies philosophy and critiques existentialist philosophers. So yeah, he's basically a philosopher. But yeah, this book was definitely a bit of an upgrade in terms of the reading level, right? This is originally in French, so the translation does not carry over that well into English, unfortunately, but it's still understandable. Just very, very dense vocabulary. Took me quite longer to read, even though this book is like at least 40 pages less than The Alchemist, but it's a philosophy book, so what do you expect? You have to take your time with it. And I also did a second read on this. I read this for the second time. And yeah, I understood way more of it the second time because I actually took my time with this after learning that you really do need to take your time with philosophy books, even if they have little to no pages. But yeah, it was quite an experience because I knew of Albert Camus' philosophy, but I didn't really fully grasp it because, of course, watching a 10-minute YouTube video on it is completely different compared to actually reading the material itself. So reading this gave me more clarity and more insight on Albert Camus' idea of what you call it, the absurd, or yeah, just his philosophy. It was really interesting looking at his perspective on life. But yeah, like I said, it's not uh it's a really good read, I would say. Doesn't really carry over in terms of translation, dense vocabulary, but if you at least have the reader level of or yeah, the reader level of a high school student, I'm pretty sure you can get through this pretty easily, or decently, I should say. But yeah, don't necessarily agree with every single thing he said in his book and how he approached it, but it was still enjoyable because I just like his perspective, or like hearing his perspective on life. We got the third book that I've read, which is The Plague, yet another book by Albert Camus. And this is actually a novel, or a fictional novel, instead of a non fictional one, from the myth of Sisyphus. Yet again, it deals with his philosophy, but he implements it in a story which is the plague. Basically, the plague is about a just like a plague taking over a town. It's a bubonic plague, so the one from like the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages and such. And then there's a doctor named I'm gonna mess this French name up so hard. Ro or Rio, I think. But yeah, just basically a doctor who's just trying to help the town folk and basically get rid of this plague as quickly as possible. I guess you could say, just so it doesn't like cause any more damage to the town. And it is completely dark. I've heard that Camus' work is, or tends to be, dark anyways, because he implements a lot of dark themes and suffering into his stories, because that's what he's been through too, because he was born in the early 1900s. He had tuberculosis. He didn't get drafted in the First World War. He was part of the French Resistance during World War II, so he basically endured that era in that time. So yeah, it's not really a surprise that he was writing completely sad and depressing material. But yeah, this book was still good, although it was very depressing. I'll be talking more about this book in another video, because this book just broke me, honestly. I won't lie. It was that impactful. But like I said, still a good book. Really depressing. So yeah, probably read this at a time where you're not feeling so down, I guess. Then we got the last book, or should I say the current book that I'm reading, which is The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Probably pronounced that name incorrectly too, but yeah, I'm just not good with foreign names. So he's a Russian novelist, and he created a lot of books. One of his most popular is the Crime and Punishment and Demons. This is also one of his or most known works too. I decided to read The Idiot first because it just intrigued me, and I really want to know, or I really want to take on this instead of taking Crime and Punishment. Although it's around like the same page count and everything, way more compared to or twice as long compared to The Plague and obviously these other books, because The Plague is around 300 pages with this book. Uh, the Sisyphus 138 pages. Alchemist, I'm starting to forget the page count. And then with the Idiot, it's 200 or 680 pages, I think, which is, yes, completely long. And I'm only on page 80 so far, and I've started reading the book 4 days ago. So this is probably going to take me quite a while, but I'm willing to take that journey. So far, it's a really interesting book. It set the premise and everything, basically about a prince who's who came back from Switzerland with from like a mental psych ward or something like that, where they were like trying to help solve his disease, which is epilepsy. Spoiler alert, I guess. I mean, they discuss about this in the introduction, so it's not really a spoiler alert. It's pretty much epilepsy. And he goes back to Russia, which is in Petersburg, and he meets other highly officials and all that type of stuff. So basically, a person who he thought he was related to because of his bloodline, but they're discussing how they're not really supposedly related because it was probably, you know. And yeah, he's basically a simple-minded person, very kind, very open and honest. And apparently there's going to be a turn or some sort of like murder, I think, later in the book. I've not finished reading it, so I'm gonna have to continue reading it and, you know, see for myself. But so far, it's a really good read, but really different from what I'm used to. Because with these books I've read, like for example, The Plague and the Alchemist, they're they're shorter books than this one. I understand why this book is pretty lengthy now because there is a lot of dialogue and a lot of monologues too. Like I just finished a whole chapter that was just nothing but a monologue of a character telling a story of his past experience. And no, it wasn't boring. It's just that it's not. I'm not used to it. Like although the dialogues and monologues are completely lengthy or completely whole chapter words, it's not boring. It's just something that I'm not used to as of yet. So the more I start reading, the more I'll get used to these like lengthy monologues and longer books because I am planning to read in the future. I've I really enjoy reading. I would have never expected it because I'm not really a person who actually reads. Like, yes, I am a creative person because I like the arts, like ranging from cinema to visual arts or music and all that type of stuff. But literature is always um, one of those uh bodies of art least interested me, and that's solely because I have a pretty bad experience of reading, I guess you can say. Like, yes, I did enjoy reading, but reading just wasn't so enjoyable, probably because of school. And yes, of course, I'm blaming school. That's like the easiest thing to blame it on, but school just did not make it enjoyable. But yes, like even during high school when I was reading novels, which was mandatory, they were still enjoyable. Vice and Men was whatever. Really, really enjoyed To Kill a Mockingbird. That's definitely in my top five favorite novels of all time. And then I read Motorcycles in Sweet Grass, which is like a Canadian novel about indigenous people and all that type of stuff. It's a really cool story. That's my one of my more enjoyable reads too. And then after that, yeah, I read The Great Gatsby. As a matter of fact, I'll be honest, don't really like The Great Gatsby. I mean, it's all right, but it's whatever. It's literally whatever. I don't. But yeah, like although I enjoyed some of those books I've read during high school, it still didn't make me that excited about reading because there's like a certain stigma about reading, and that's all because of school. Because it feels like it's mandatory to read. But when I read these books, I enjoyed it because I chose to read these books and I find them interesting. So I actually didn't mind. I don't mind how lengthy and how complex they can be because I want to learn. I want to see a different perspective. And I just want to see how it's written or how it's going to unfold. And that's how I basically start to enjoy reading more. So yeah, I really enjoy reading and I'm not going to stop reading after this. I'm probably going to buy a whole ton of books and waste a lot of money on books, but that is completely okay because reading is important and it is most importantly fun. But anyways, that is it for the video today. Yes, I'm wearing the same sweater because I recorded 2 videos in one day, so um, you guys can't really knock me down on that. But this video's getting a bit too long now. I didn't expect it to be this long, honestly. But I guess that's just how much I enjoy talking about books now. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Later.